A cast iron pot in a plantation kitchen was not rustic decoration, it was heavy labor. Heat, smoke, and the genius of enslaved cooks who turned rations that were never meant to be enough into meals that kept entire families alive. But here is what nobody tells you. Number 3 on this list will change how you see mac and cheese forever. Number 25 needs nothing but cornmeal, water, and a hot skillet. Number 1 is a bowl of broth that carried an entire childhood. These 25 secrets were not recipes, they were survival. Hit that subscribe button. Number 25. Spider skillet corn cakes. No oven, no yeast. Cornmeal, water, salt, and a scraping of fat poured onto a greased cast iron skillet over open flame or buried straight in hot ash, cooked until golden on both sides. Abby Fisher recorded it in 1881 as plantation cornbread, or hoe cake. A Chicago restaurant sells skillet cornbread with honey butter for $12 now. The old cooks just called it bread. Number 24. Cornmeal batter bread. Cornmeal stirred with milk, eggs, butter, and leavening poured into a cast iron pan and baked near direct flame. The cook judged batter thickness and fire heat with nothing but her hands. No thermometer, no timer. Mary Randolph published it in 1824. Melinda Russell preserved cornmeal breads in 1866. Boxed cornbread mix erased all of it. Number 23. Pot liquor. The broth left from cooking greens was not waste. Collards or turnip greens simmered slow in a cast iron pot with pork scraps and salt until the liquid turned dark and rich. Drunk straight or soaked with cornbread. A Chicago restaurant now sells collards with pot liquor for $13. Grandmothers never called it trendy, they called it not wasting supper. Number 22. Greens with ham hock. Collards, turnip greens, mustard greens, whatever grew, simmered for hours in a cast iron kettle with a ham hock, jowl, or slab of fatback until the bone gave up everything it had and the greens went soft. Nothing discarded. Not the broth, not the leaves, not the fat. Today it is a restaurant side. Then it was how a family survived on rations that were never enough. Number 21. Black-eyed peas. Protein when there was no meat. Cowpeas carried from West Africa became a lifeline in plantation quarters. Soaked overnight, dropped into a cast iron pot with water, pork fat, and onion, if the garden had one. Simmered slow until soft. The cooking liquid saved same as pot liquor. Nothing poured out. Everything eaten. Canned beans are convenient. They also lost the broth-building knowledge that made a handful of dried peas feed a family. Number 20. Hoppin' John. Black-eyed peas cooked with pork in one cast iron pot until nearly tender, then rice stirred in to finish in the same liquid. One pot. Every grain of rice absorbed the flavor of beans and meat. The rice knowledge came from West Africa, carried under coercion to the Carolina Low Country. A survival meal that became a New Year's Day tradition across the American South. Restaurants call it heritage cuisine now. Families called it supper. Number 19. Okra gumbo. Okra came from West Africa. Fat and flour stirred into a dark roux in a cast iron skillet, slow and constant because 1 second of neglect burned the whole batch. Okra and scraps added with water and simmered thick. Served over rice. Abby Fisher preserved gumbo recipes in 1881. A cup in New Orleans costs about $7 now. In New York, delivery menus price it above $35. The secret was not luxury. It was making one pot feed everyone. Number 18. Gumbos of herbs. When there was no meat and no seafood, there were greens. Every edible leaf and herb gathered, cooked down, chopped, combined with a roux in cast iron, and simmered into a thick green stew. Louisiana Creole tradition turned scarcity into ceremony. Today, it is a restaurant specialty. It started with using every leaf in reach. Number 17. Fried fish in cornmeal. At Mount Vernon, rations for enslaved people included salted fish and cornmeal. Archaeology shows they fished on their own time to supplement. Fish dredged through cornmeal and salt, lowered into a cast iron skillet of hot lard fried until the crust crackled golden. A New York restaurant sells cornmeal-crusted fried seafood for $28.50 now. The difference is not the ingredient. It is who gets credited for the knowledge. Number 16. Saltfish hash. Salted fish. Day after day. The only choice was making monotony edible. Soaked to pull the salt, flaked apart, mixed with cornmeal or mashed potato, shaped flat, and fried in a cast-iron skillet until browned on both sides. Frozen fish sticks replaced that skill. Nobody noticed it was gone. Number 15. Lye hominy. Turning hard-dried corn into soft food required chemistry nobody called chemistry. Corn soaked in lye water from wood ash until the hulls loosened and the kernels swelled. Rinsed again and again. Boiled or fried in cast iron. The ratio of ash to water had to be exact. Too much, and the batch turned bitter. Instant grits hide that knowledge completely. Number 14. Grits with grease gravy. Soft, cheap, fed children and the elderly when nothing else could. Corn grits boiled in a cast-iron pot, stirred slow until thick. The drippings left from frying meat scraped up with water and stirred into gravy. Poured over hot grits. Cornmeal rations were standard at Montpelier. A New York restaurant sells shrimp and grits for $24 now. Number 13. Rice cultivation in the Carolinas relied heavily on West African knowledge carried under force. That knowledge became a regional cuisine. Rice cooked in a single cast-iron pot with fat, pork, onion, and tomatoes when available. The grain absorbed every drop of liquid and every layer of flavor. One pot, one complete meal. The modern Carolina Gold Rice revival sells that same knowledge as luxury. Number 12. Field pea stew with greens. Peas, greens, pork fat, water, all in one cast-iron pot. Simmered until the peas softened, the greens broke down, and the broth thickened into something that held protein, vegetable, and fat in a single bowl. A complete meal from not enough. Today it sells as farm-to-table braised legumes. Number 11. Game stew. After the day's forced labor ended, enslaved people at Mount Vernon hunted wild game, fished, gardened, gathered nuts and berries, and raised chickens to supplement their rations. Possum, rabbit, or squirrel cleaned and cut into pieces, dropped into a cast-iron pot with root vegetables and water, simmered for hours until the meat fell from the bone. Modern wild game restaurants repackage that self-reliance as rustic luxury. Number 10. Cornmeal dumplings in broth. When broth was all that remained, cornmeal and water shaped into small balls and dropped into whatever cast-iron pot was simmering. Greens, beans, stew. The dumplings cooked in the liquid, soaked up the flavor, and became solid food where there had been only broth. Processed soup crackers replaced that knowledge entirely. Number 9. Skillet biscuits. Simple ingredients. Difficult technique. Flour, lard, milk, salt. The dough for beaten biscuits was struck hundreds of times until it went smooth and cracked with air. Baked in a Dutch oven, a skillet, or a hearth oven with heat judged entirely by hand. Abby Fisher, born into slavery and unable to read or write, dictated 160 recipes, including biscuits, for her 1881 cookbook. Canned refrigerated biscuits replaced that hand knowledge completely. Number 8. Cracklings, cornbread. Nothing wasted. Pork scraps rendered in a cast-iron skillet until the fat ran clear and the solids crisped into cracklings. Those cracklings folded into cornmeal batter with water and salt baked in the same skillet. Every piece carried fat, protein, and smoke from the pork. Bacon cornbread is a restaurant menu item now. Then, it was just thrift. Number 7. Smothered chicken. Sunday food, celebration food, the kind of cooking that silenced a kitchen. Chicken pieces dredged in flour and browned in a hot cast-iron skillet with fat, then covered with water, lidded, and simmered slow until the meat went tender and the pan liquid thickened into rich gravy from the flour, the fat, and the drippings. Abby Fisher recorded roasted meats and gravies in her 1881 cookbook. A restaurant sells smothered chicken plates for $18.95 now. Number 6. Sweet potato skillet pone. Sweetness when life gave almost none. Sweet potatoes roasted until soft, mashed with fat and molasses, pressed into a cast-iron skillet and baked over the hearth. No oven meant the skillet became the oven. Molasses replaced sugar. Sweet potato replaced pumpkin. Substitution was the art. Sweet potato pie carries deep meaning in Black American life, tied to resilience and comfort. Now sold as holiday nostalgia. Then it was resourcefulness. Number 5. Molasses, gingerbread. A rare sweet that could turn a hard table into something that felt like home. Molasses, flour, fat, ginger, and baking soda mixed together and poured into a Dutch oven or cast-iron skillet. Baked in what Melinda Russell's 1866 cookbook called a quick oven, meaning high heat judged by smell in the back of a hand. Her cookbook is the oldest known by a Black American woman. Boxed cake mixes replaced the skill of reading fire by instinct. Number 4. Survival pies. No fruit, no eggs, no milk. The pantry nearly bare. Water or vinegar stirred together with sugar or molasses and flour until thick, poured into a crust and baked until the filling set solid. A pie made from almost nothing. These recipes trace more clearly through Depression-era and frontier kitchens than plantation records. But the survival instinct behind them runs through the same bloodline. Chess pie and vinegar pie revivals sell as heritage dessert now. Number 3. Macaroni pie. James Hemings was born into slavery at Monticello in 1765. Thomas Jefferson took him to France to train as a chef. He became chef de cuisine. Monticello records indicate Hemings likely learned baked pasta with cheese during his culinary training in Paris and helped bring macaroni and cheese into American food. Pasta boiled, mixed with cheese, butter, and cream, placed into a bake kettle, and baked over the hearth until the cheese bubbled golden and the top crisped. French technique. American ingredients. The hands of an enslaved black chef. One of the most beloved comfort foods in this country carries his skill, and most families were never taught his name. Boxed mac and cheese became the shortcut. The credit went somewhere else. Number 2. The one-pot ration meal. This was not one recipe. This was a system. At Monticello, a single adult's weekly ration could be 1 peck of cornmeal, 4 salted fish, and half a pound of pork or pickled beef. Nursing mothers received extra cornmeal. At Montpelier, those rations were considered insufficient for the labor demanded. Cornmeal became bread or mush. Greens simmered with scraps into pot liquor. Gardens, hunting, fishing, foraging filled the rest. Cornmeal, fish, greens. That was the system. Modern meal kits sell convenience. These cooks built nourishment from restriction. Number 1. The shared pot. A WPA interview recorded in the 1930s remembered childhood supper. Pot liquor and cornbread, eaten from a large wooden tray shared among the children. Another account recalled pot liquor with breadcrumbs and meat that rarely came. The broth from greens dark and thick ladled into a single vessel. Cornbread broken and dropped in. Sometimes a scrap of meat. Children gathered around one bowl and ate together. The cook who made it, usually a mother, usually a grandmother, had tried to stretch broth and bread to reach every mouth the pot could feed. The sound of a spoon scraping the bottom. The smell of greens simmered low with smoke. Small hands tearing cornbread apart. Today, chefs bottle broth, sell heritage sides, and plate nostalgia at restaurant prices. For those children, it was survival.